Right, now looking at my strengths in a bit more detail. So the first strength that was seen is the fact that the organisation and planning was very good. This was based around the fact that we were set up very early, so we had all our stations set up, and we knew exactly where we were moving from, where we were transitioning, when we were transitioning. This just meant that the session worked a lot more effectively, and it meant that there was less time in between for the participants to wait, meaning that there wasn't the chance for them to lose focus and perhaps lose a bit of interest in what we're doing. So it meant that the session could move quite quickly and could transition easy. Also, the fact that we knew exactly where the teaching points would come in and where the sort of drills, we'd let them take shape, let them see if there was anything that they were perhaps doing wrong where we needed to point them out. It just meant that there was time for sort of verbal demonstrations and that we were able to convey a lot of learning points in the time that we were available for. The second use of space was the fact that the second strength was the use of space, equipment and facilities. So as mentioned before, this kind of interlocks with the organisation aspect of it. There we managed to set up all our drills in the space that we had available for us, but it wasn't too close. It meant that there wasn't a lot of packing away, getting back out, and yet again it just meant that the session could run more efficiently and there was less breaks, less time for people to lose interest. When working with younger groups that perhaps do lose interest quite and focused quite easily, then that minimal time that they had to lose that focus when they weren't doing stuff was really cut down by our use of the facilities and the equipment. Also, we used a lot of different equipment when we were using our and planning our drills. So we had hula hoops, cones, balls, bats, all different types of things that equipment that was based around using for them to learn different skills and to be able to adapt to use different equipment. And then finally, enthusiasm. So this was based around the fact that I managed to convey a lot of positive energy and enthusiasm. So as a coach, I believe that this helped the session overall, as it meant that the kids saw the sort of positive enthusiasm that I showed towards the session, and that just got them slightly more engaged. If you have a coach that's wanting to be there and wanting to deliver the session, then the students are much more likely to have a good time and get involved in the session. As if you're kind of quite dull, quite low toned. I mean, obviously there is a level of enthusiasm that is too much. It's about getting the balance right, and by doing that, it just gets everyone more focused, and also it helps you to become almost become the center of attention when you're needing to deliver the key coaching points that are needed. They're going to listen to you a lot more if you're perhaps a little bit louder, showing that you're enthusiastic about it and that almost like you're confident with what you're doing, so you're able to convey that confidence over to them with what they should be doing. Okay, so our first weakness and first development plan was the fact that we lost a bit of group control at times. So obviously we had a very difficult group, and perhaps in the little moments where they were losing focus, so maybe this was part way through a drill or just as a drill was about to start, they were losing a bit of focus, and it was just disrupting the group as we constantly had to keep telling them to get focused and sort of focus on what they're doing, and it meant that a lot of time was wasted where we could look at improving skills and techniques rather than having to tell them to refocus and engage in the session again. So a smart target for this would be in a month to be able to lead a session and waste less than 5 minutes of a session with participants losing focus and misbehaving. So obviously I felt that there was definitely over 5 minutes that we lost due to people not focusing, misbehaving, and just the constant little conversations and perhaps not doing what they're told with the equipment. And it wastes a lot of time, and it becomes incredibly frustrating for the ones that want to learn and also for us as coaches. So the first step of my development plan would be within a week, I want to deliver another session, and this time record it and review it and see how much time is wasted first of all, and why the kids are getting distracted. Is it something to do with there's maybe too much time in between sort of each drill? Maybe that they feel that, like the way I've spaced out, they feel that when backs are turned they can lose a bit of focus and mess about a bit. Maybe it's about interacting a bit more with the group and ensuring that they are just that little bit more focused. So I would review where I'm going wrong, as that would be the first step. I can individually see where I'm going wrong and maybe where I need to improve. And then within the month, I'd want to find a work placement to observe at least 3 other coaches and to gain some techniques that can be used to control groups. So interlocking this with the first one, I'd see where I went wrong and gain where I thought I could improve, but then I would then observe other coaches and see what they had to do and what different techniques they used to control their groups, and also it would allow me to see different groups and how different groups react to different types of teaching. So this would allow me to obviously gain key techniques and just gain that experience of dealing with all different sorts of people and all different sorts of needs. And also it would help me when you have smaller groups, bigger groups, just so I have the diversity within my coaching abilities to be able to keep group control, because it's one of the basics of coaching. If you can't control your group, you're not going to achieve anything in very much time at all. And then finally it will end with, after I want to take those techniques, take my own personal feedback, and then I will record myself again at the end of the month and try and target a session that wastes less than 5 minutes messing about and doing stuff that really shouldn't be going on. So my second review is that I will look to include more non-verbal communication, as one of the feedbacks was that perhaps my the demonstrations weren't as clear as they could be, weren't as effective, and also maybe there wasn't enough of them. As for visual learners, it could be a massive advantage to have these within the session, and also as the session was led to younger kids, probably quite a lot of them are quite visual, and too much speaking will perhaps go straight over their heads and they just won't listen, they won't take it in, and they won't understand any of the key points that are needed from them. So the smart target I set for this was to be able to produce a session that involves at least 2 demonstrations of different skills in the next 6 weeks. So I thought this target would just by having 2 demonstrations, I think that would ensure the physical picture is planted for whatever skill I choose, and realistically you're not going to look to do a lot more than 2 skills per session. So by having these, it will ensure that I'm able to produce a session that the visual learners will accept as well. So looking at the development plan, we would start by doing a specific level 1 in order to gain a basic knowledge to produce a demonstration. So this would be, by doing a level 1 specific, you're looking more at the techniques needed, the strategies and the technique. So it allows the technique to be shown in the form of a demonstration, as I will gain some basic knowledge and some more advanced knowledge of the background of, we will take cricket for the example. I'll just learn the little points and structures that will be needed in order to produce a demonstration that is effective, and be able to break down each stage of the technique and how to also advance this on, so that we are still seeing improvements and constant advances in the individuals taking the session by using these physical demonstrations, and allowing them to paint a picture of sort of how it's meant to be done. Secondly, I would once again observe 2 other coaches to demonstrate how they would integrate demonstrations into their session, and also see the technique in which they use to demonstrate. So for example, the stage in which they break it down, how much detail they break it down into, whether that depends on what sort of standard you have. You might have less stages if you have, you might have more stages if you have a slightly less able group, or you may want to keep it simple. It would just be about learning how physically I could gain that advantage to be able to produce demonstrations that are going to be effective for the group to learn. And then hopefully finally I'll be able to produce a session with these 2 demonstrations that are effective and allow for improvements. Finally, the final weakness was progression of skills and technique during the session. So it was pointed out that from the beginning perhaps there wasn't the advances in their skill set that perhaps there should have been. And this may have been for a number of reasons. This may have been because the plan I set out wasn't effective enough and wasn't allowing for the different stages of improvement. Maybe it wasn't challenging enough. Or it may have been more because of the ineffective, maybe, way in which I went about trying to demonstrate the techniques and the skills, and that they just genuinely didn't pick up how to take that next step and show that improvement. So my smart target for the next 6 weeks was to complete a session that has three clear stages to it for a chosen skill. So this will be a sort of basic level, and then a more advanced level, and then hopefully ending with sort of being able to put this into a game situation. So you have 3 clear stages, and I thought the best way to go about this was firstly to examine my session plan, as that's the core basis of where this progression is going to be seen. So obviously going back over it, seeing where I made the mistakes last time, perhaps didn't have the level. Yeah, going back over, looking at perhaps where I didn't have that 3 stages, that clear stage of where you can go from basic to more advanced work, and that perhaps this is something that just needs to be looked at, just to ensure that going into the session, I've got an effective lesson plan that I can then work from and teach from. Secondly, I'd look to do some work experience at a local sports club in order to practice to get the progression within the session, and repeatedly record the sessions to see where the mistakes were being made. As at a sports club, you're going to want to see that improvement more than perhaps in a school, because the people are there to learn and improve their skills rather than being forced to do it because they have to do it in PE lessons. And also the constant recording would just show where I need to make those changes in order to see that progression. And finally, I'd end by